And if California was a country itself, it'd still be one of the top leaders as far as geothermal production in the world at almost 2 gigawatts. So the US is the leader as far as the overall geothermal leader at, I think, 3.5 gigawatts of production. And I think California itself has somewhere around 4,500 wells in geothermal that.
Welcome to Geothermal Unleashed, where we're going to explore the cutting edge of geothermal energy. I'm Elizabeth Cambre from the Vallourec New Energies team, and I'm here to help educate and document geothermal's rise in the global energy transition. I'm thrilled to welcome our guest today, Rob Klenner, who's the president of GreenFire Energy. Rob, we've known each other for many years since our time at Baker Hughes. And although we worked in different divisions, I was always fascinated by the projects that you were involved in, and I constantly sought out opportunities to collaborate with you. So I'm super
Yeah.
excited that we're both now in the geothermal space and we get to collaborate now. We also share a common background. So my family is from a small town in North Dakota. My mom lives on a little geothermal farm, and you're from South Dakota and you grew up on a farm. So I was thinking to kick things off, could you share a bit about your background, your education, and your career before joining the geothermal sector with GreenFire Energy so our listeners can get to know you better?
Yeah, no, and pleasure being here today. So thanks for having me. And it's always exciting to talk about geothermal and, advocate for our industry. My background, like you said, I grew up in a very small town in South Dakota, farming community, grew up in the country. And yeah, really, energy isn't an abundance thing in a state like South Dakota. There's a little bit of oil and gas, but that's very far away from where I grew up. I grew up in the southeast part of the state. And, subsurface geology, energy really fascinated me. I ended up going to the University of North Dakota up in Grand Forks and got my bachelor's and master's degree both in geology there. And yeah, everyone, you know, there's a lot of new people into geothermal, but I've actually been in geothermal since my graduate studies and undergraduate studies. And really, one of my big aspirations was, in my career, I want to go work at Calpine. It's the, world leader as far as geothermal and the geysers. So, lucky enough for me, I got to intern there for a year during my master's while I finished that up. And then as my career progressed, I stayed close to home, uh, got married, so we kind of settled in Grand Forks for a while, and I worked at the EERC up there and got into carbon storage work. Did that for many years. Went to GE and kind of snowballed into what they have, a global research center, and it was really, like you said, fascinated of what we were doing here in Oklahoma City when they set up this center. And, we were kind of the dreamers in the organization of what else can we do as far as energy? What are the different technologies? And so, yeah, now I've kind of come full circle back into geothermal early in my career. And like I said, I was an intern and now, excited because we have a project out at the geysers at Calpine. So it's a really unique opportunity to kind of come full circle back into the industry where I first started almost 14 to 15 years ago. So yeah, having a lot of fun.
I love that. That's a great story. Okay, so now you are the president at GreenFire. Can you share with us how you made that transition into GreenFire?
Yeah, so I was with Baker Hughes previously to this position, and Baker Hughes has an investment into GreenFire, so I've always been closely connected within the organization, very involved just as they've been looking to scale the business and where it needs to go. And great partners, of course, with you and Vallourec and HMP during the Series A round and now their project out at Calpine. So eager to be a part of this startup world. I think everyone kind of dreams of, hey, I want to be a part of a startup and I want to grow a business. I think that's ingrained in a lot of us in America, just kind of the American mentality of, building a startup in your own company. So I said, this is a unique opportunity. They have the great project at the geysers. Let's see where we can go from here. And so that's, yeah, I kind of jumped 2 feet in and been here now for over almost 6 months, and it's been a lot of fun and have a great team around me. So I think that keeps me really happy, is having a great team to execute our strategic plan at the moment. And yeah, having a lot of fun and a lot of challenges too, but learning along the way.
You've got so much passion and you're organized. And I was like, if anyone can get things off the ground, it's going to be Rob. So I'm super excited to see what you're going to do. I mean, you guys have already accomplished some things since you've been on the GreenFire team, and we'll talk about that. But I'm sure there's just so much more to come. So, all right, let's start though. For our listeners who are not familiar with GreenFire, can you explain who GreenFire is, what you're focused on? And then maybe talk a little bit about your value proposition and how GreenFire differentiates itself from other geothermal startups on the market.
Yeah, no, and great question. It's I get to learn about GreenFire's history as well. And there's a lot of startups in our industry, but GreenFire's been around for 15 years, and a lot of people don't realize that it's, the length and the history of the company itself and how long it takes to kind of scale a company like this and where they're at today. And actually, a lot of their first projects were some DOE funds and looking at EGS. And so they were doing CO2 EGS almost 15 years ago. And so most of our, the industry knows us as a I guess closed loop type developer, which we do have a lot of intellectual property around. And really that I'd say is our key differentiator at the moment, and how we're using that technology. And it's interesting because I get to talk to, being in Oklahoma City, a lot of oil and gas people too, and explaining what we're doing in the industry. And I have to explain our technology, and what we're really looking at is we're basically almost an EOR operator for the geothermal industry. We want to go into fields, we want to revitalize them. People ask me, does geothermal work? And I go, well, there's 17 gigawatts globally in, really good conventional reservoirs. And just like the oil and gas industry saw, depletion of reservoirs and how you keep that up, the geothermal industry needs the same. So that's really our technology focus on the what we previously did at COSO. And so anyway, we're very excited to look at our technology and how we revitalize fields, and that's a key differentiator for us at the moment.
Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about, I like how you're describing what you're doing compared to the oil and gas with enhanced oil recovery. So let's talk about what the market looks like in the US for revitalization of geothermal wells.
Yeah, so we, one, we can use our technology in existing wells. We can also drill other wells and almost like step out like you would in core acreage for developing a kind of an EOR operation as well. Um, California, if California, I tell everyone, if California was a country itself, it'd still be one of the top leaders as far as geothermal production in the world at almost 2 gigawatts. So the US is the leader as far as the overall, I guess, geothermal leader at, I think, 3.5 gigawatts of production. And I think California itself has somewhere around 4,500 wells in geothermal that, they really have drilled over time. And Calpine, where we're up at the geysers, there's a few, some other operators up there as well. There's close to 600 wells just at the geysers itself. So there's a lot of opportunity for us to deploy this technology and revitalize a lot of these existing fields.
Okay, so I've got some questions. How old are these wells, and have they, what has the production decline look like? I guess it's not production, it's the temperature decline that we're looking at in geothermal.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily temperature. It actually is decline of the steam. So the steam production has declined, and it's really similar to oil and gas, where you have pressure maintenance issues, right? So as you're depleting pressure and maybe you don't have the same drive as you did before, as you're depleting really the water mass or resource, because the heat is still there. It's really the transfer mechanism of getting the heat out is the steam and the resource. So steam depletion or depletion of the steam, or maybe something else has happened to the well as far as scaling or some other wellbore integrity issues. But it's these wells are old, 80s, 90s, and so there's a lot of these wells out there that our technology can be applied to and kind of help mitigate some of the pressure maintenance type issues and extract the heat using the closed loop system itself.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about that. So what does that technology look like? So, you take an existing geothermal well and then you're turning it into a closed loop well. Can you explain more what that looks like?
Yeah, so at the geysers, they're already injecting water. They have their geysers revitalization project that they did many years ago to bring water up and inject it from wastewater treatment plant. And so they're currently injecting water into this reservoir to kind of reboost the water resource down there. Now, what we're able to do is to go in some of these other wells that are adjacent within the field. So there's a lot of, as someone simply said it, you're swirling the bath water down there, right? So the heat and the steam is already moving. What we're doing is we're going into some of these wells and putting a tube and tube heat exchanger. So it's, if it's we have a 7 5/8 casing. We have a vacuum insulated tubing, which we're working with Vallourec on. And that tubing then allows us to inject down the annular space and back up to the surface. So no fluid is going into the reservoir. And as the steam is contacting that, so it's still open to the formation, the steam is condensing in and around the outside casing. As that condenses, it goes back into the well and then goes back into the reservoir. So unlike a lot of people mention for closed loop system, they say, well, it's all conduction based, but there's actually a lot of convection happening in and around our wellbore. And so there's twofold here. We're having a closed loop system to get the heat out. And then we're also allowing for, the other wells to maintain their production as they're injecting and producing around the field. So it's another mechanism to get more heat out of the reservoir, and overall deliverability.
Okay, can you share a little bit about what the power output might be before you convert it to a closed loop and then what it would be after?
Yeah, so for some of these wells, steam production is either ceased or they're idle and they're not delivering anymore. So, some of the steam interaction is down there. They're just not either producing it to the surface. So one of the wells we're going into is fairly depleted. It's probably producing, down in tenths of a megawatt. What we're hoping to achieve with a lot of these wells and we've been able to model quite a few of these steam dominated fields globally. And it really depends on some of the subsurface geology, but we're targeting anywhere between half a megawatt up to 2 megawatts once we start to install the system. So we're just able to move a lot more fluid in the downhole environment than what's actually down there. So that gives us better deliverability back to the surface. So, there's an opportunity in my mind where we can improve, production 3 4 times in some of these fields using a system like this as they kind of continue their operations in and around the field.
Okay, so this makes me think of another question. So we're obviously changing the structure of the wellbore, but you were producing steam at one point, so I imagine you had a steam turbine. Now, do we need a different type of turbine at the surface because we're no longer producing steam?
Yeah, so we'd be using ORC-based systems with, various working fluids that we could work with. We work with different vendors, different sizes, working with our key partner, Baker Hughes. They build and develop ORCs as well. So yeah, that'd be part of the equation. how many wells would we bring together? Even the well we're working on at Calpine, I think there's either maybe three or four different wells there. So it's, co-locating these types of systems together, and then having a centralized plant there, using ORCs.
Okay. All right. So we'll come to talk. I want to hear a little about the latest update on the Calpine project, but can we step back in time first to talk about the first AGS well or closed loop well that was done in COSO?
Hmm. Yeah, and that obviously predates me a little bit, but COSO was uh, I'm trying to think back in 2020 or prior to that. And it was just a shorter demonstration, CEC funded. I think the heat exchanger was down to about 1,000 feet. So it was very shorter than what we're targeting more commercially at some of these other, Calpine and others that we're talking to. And so it was designed to be a shorter demonstration, just like most pilots. And now we're kind of moving into more of the commercial phase. So it gave the company and I think the industry a good opportunity to test these closed loop
Mhm.
systems and say, hey, we can do this, we can achieve something. I think the output at that one was close to a megawatt from my understanding. And now, yeah, really kind of moving forward of how do we start to commercialize this in a more scaled up manner? How do we get into some of these deeper wells,
Okay.
and improve the power output overall?
Okay, so that project was a pilot and it ran for a given period of time. You
Mm.
demonstrated the closed loop system, and now you've turned to a commercial project with Calpine. So, what are the latest updates with that project?
Yeah, so actively in the field right now, installing the casing and the tubing, and then we start to plan here in the next couple months to build out a surface facility around that. This one again is partly funded by the CEC too, so publicly funded out of the state of California. And Calpine's been a great partner as well as we've been looking to get into the field here over the past year. So yeah, we've actively put in the casing and the tubing. Now we're just kind of on track here to build the surface facility, and then we'll have testing and results here, hopefully in the first half of this year, probably mid second quarter.
Okay, so with the surface facility that you're building out, is that going to, how much power would you or are you planning to come from that facility?
Yeah, so when I say surface, we don't have an active ORC, so we're kind of stepping through these projects. Obviously, you got to get the subsurface components down and installed. Then we're going to go to the surface as far as the pumps and the piping to build out and circulate the actual working fluid down in the subsurface. Then if we can, once we kind of have that testing complete and understand what our heat extraction could achieve, then make a decision, I guess, after that to build an ORC system. So right now, as part of, I guess, the funded project through CEC, never really included the ORC part. So we'll complete kind of the first phase of the project, do the subsurface surface, test out the system. If things kind of move forward, it's kind of the end of the publicly funded project. It's our project, and what do we want to do after that? That'll be additional decisions on sizing a surface facility as far as power
Sure.
generation there.
All right, so you're anticipating that there is going to be more wells that you'll be revitalizing within the geyser region.
Again, yeah, it's always a possibility, but it's dependent on Calpine. It's
Okay.
their field and operations. Again, this is a good milestone, I guess, to work together. What can this achieve? And then we'll work hand in hand with them of the next steps from there. Again, they've been up there for many years. They have several power plants. They have the infrastructure. So really, we just need to get through the next few months, and then we'll go from there about how we potentially scale this up.
Yeah. And then can you just hit on again and just walk us through? So just what the challenges are in the geysers with the wells that are currently on production?
Yeah, so in not a don't work up at the geysers day to day, and they know better than I do. But from my understanding, the geysers used to produce around 2 gigawatts, so 2,000 megawatts, and substantially over the years. And that's why I use the oil and gas analogy for the listeners out there, because much like you produce oil and gas, after a while, your water cut goes up and your pressure declines and you're not producing as much oil because of subsurface challenges. And so what happened was very similar: overproduced the water mass. You didn't have a natural, influx of water back into the system. So the heat is there. There's a heat source, unlike some of these other areas outside of California. So the heat is always there. It's just the water isn't there for the steam to come to the surface. So they ended up, don't know the dates exactly, but they ended up having the geysers revitalization, where they built a pipeline from Santa Rosa up to the geysers. So they do have water to inject, but still that is very limited, right? So getting more water is a challenge. And so, I almost see it as like they're already doing EGS by piping water. It's a naturally fractured reservoir, so they didn't have to do any stimulation, but they're injecting water into the reservoir. They're able to boost production back up, not to the levels it was previously. And so that's been going on for a while, from their injection revitalization. And now I kind of see this as another opportunity to continue to boost production at the geysers, using this production technology.
Okay, so my next question for you is let's look at the Inflation Reduction Act. And maybe sorry, the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA. So if we start looking at Made in America initiatives, can you talk about how that impacts being able to execute a job like this for Calpine?
Yeah, I mean, it's much easier for us to work with. We had several key partners, Vallourec's one of them included, and Baker Hughes with our investment partners. So very much, I guess it doesn't keep me up at night working in the United States. And, we do have potential projects globally, but there's obviously a bit of comfort working closer to home, and vendors we can contact when we need them. And then, yeah, even with the Inflation Reduction Act and Made in America, of course, we're working closely with very domestic partners and executing our project here, and sourcing things locally when we can do it, and when we make it. And that's been actually a great opportunity with the CEC as well, and a lot of the things we have to look at too, of what can be done in California and how we implement this project. So it's helped logistically as well, and just helped us kind of streamline things here within the past few months as we ramped up to move this project into the field. And even to think about Made in America, it's not just the raw materials, but it's also the people too. And I'm in Oklahoma City. I've been able to hire some people here locally recently as well, and it's just been a great opportunity to have people in the oil and gas industry excited in geothermal. And I think it's just going to be a great opportunity as I hopefully form and build more people here in Oklahoma City, and the capabilities they've had during the shale revolution,
Sure.
with great companies of Chesapeake, Devon, Continental, and everyone in between, to use their talents as well, because I think it's going to be key and critical as we move into some of our more greenfield type projects as well.
Absolutely. All right, so I want to know what is up next for GreenFire.
Yeah, so Calpine is obviously getting us very excited in what we're doing there and implementing our technology. Uh, the other exciting part, and so that's kind of our two areas we're focusing. It's how do we work with existing developers, revitalize fields, and boost production out of these known geothermal areas. And then it's really bringing energy to the doorstep of where demand is needed. Uh, when I came in, it was just obviously the previous management group and what they were doing was great. They got on the project with the DIU and the DoD. So I'm very excited about that project, working out at El Centro, which is again, for us, we want to be in these low risk, good geothermal areas, and El Centro is right next to the Salton Sea, where there's lots of geothermal development. And so our intent there is to work with the Navy, and how do we really build geothermal behind the meter? And it's something that, solar and wind has been doing for many years now, but there's not, from my understanding, someone said there's a large geothermal project out there behind the meter, but if there's one, there should be more. So, we want to go do this with the Navy. There's several other companies out there like Sage and Fervo ever doing very similar things through the DIU. But anyway, I'm excited to see how geothermal can be that behind the meter, sustainable 24/7 power supply that is critical for military bases, data centers, and other companies looking to decarbonize.
So, just for listeners that have never heard that term, can you just explain what behind the meter means?
Yeah, I mean, simply it's like putting solar panels on your house. You have the power there. It's, maybe you have a battery bank if you're able to do that at your house, but it's like you don't have to rely on the grid. It's almost like and someone else was like, it's like having the fridge in your house too. It's you don't have to go to the store all the time. You have your food and everything that you need because of the refrigeration. But
Sure,
really, it's just having the power. It's sense of security, right? So
sure.
as the places like the military, if the grid goes down, it's essential that they continue to operate, and so that's why data centers are another industry, semiconductor factories, right? They need to make sure their energy is always available. And everyone's kind of looking at the moment to it's geothermal, natural gas, or nuclear because these are 24/7 reliable energies. And so maybe there's a mix in there. Maybe you have to pay a little bit of a premium, but it's the sense of security I think people are looking for now.
And then do you think, I'm going to jump, I've got a question on, geothermal powering data centers. Will we see closed loop geothermal systems potentially powering these data centers?
Yeah, I think it's totally possible. Our approach as a company, it's not force fitting closed loop to be the only solution. Now, I've always thought there may be a hybrid engineered, hydraulic fractured closed loop type system, similar to what we're doing at the geysers, right? It's naturally fractured, they're injecting water, but we're also doing closed loop. I think there's a hybrid approach that can be done. So I think closed loop is definitely an opportunity. But really, it just comes down to, the physics, the geology, what's the right technology to deploy. And, I'll go back to the oil and gas mentality of, no one argues about what is the best oil and gas technology. It's about what is the right technology to apply to that field. But I think, yeah, all technologies in the geothermal industry are going to help power these data centers because we're going to need them all, or we're going to find hybrid type solutions that's going to help and support. So, as they're looking for energy, geothermal's got to be part of the solution.
Yeah, that makes sense. So this is my last question that I have for you before we end today. I'm very curious to learn about what you're doing outside of the US. Is GreenFire looking at any international projects?
Yeah, so definitely outside the US, we have some public announcements out there in Kenya and the Philippines, uh, just because of the nature of GreenFire over the past few years with the closed loop and revitalization approaches. The U.S. market obviously is one of the biggest for, geothermal producers, but Indonesia's fastly moving, if not, will move past the U.S. as far as geothermal production. The Philippines, Iceland, is there as well, and Kenya. So a lot of these countries where geothermal has already been established, it's been an industry for many, many years. They're also looking for our technology to be that kind of EOR or enhanced recovery technology to help revitalize and boost production in the field. So it's a great opportunity, for us to look internationally. Of course, that has its challenges as well. We're a very small team, but again, we're grateful for like our partners again, Vallourec, H&P, and Baker Hughes because they give us that global opportunity to kind of scale too. So, yeah, many opportunities internationally, but we given we're a small team, and we want to get this Calpine to the next level, and I think that'll kind of open doors internationally as well as we kind of look to do more of these projects.
Yeah, and we'll be looking out for the results. I'm assuming you're going to publish and share with the public results from the Calpine project.
Yeah, I don't know timing of when we'll have something out. I'm sure we'll have a publication out there once we get all the data, and we'll do some additional modeling and simulation with our great team that we have here at GreenFire. So definitely we'll have something either announced at a later date and published at some point.
We'll be looking forward for that to
Yeah.
that. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Geothermal Unleashed. I hope today's discussions has sparked new insights and deepened everyone's understanding of the geothermal industry's incredible potential. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible, and let's continue working together to unleash the full potential of geothermal. Thank you, and thank you, Rob.
All right. Thank you.